Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome to Pro Cycling Manager 2023. This is my Lions Let's Play series of the career mode. For those unfamiliar, I do a build a continent series. It's on extreme difficulty, and then I add extra challenges on top of that because even on the hardest difficulty level, I find the game a little bit on the easy side. But once you tap on those challenges, yeah, it gets real fun real fast. We're going to jump right into it. This is a game brought to you by Cyanide Studios and Nacon, and I'm really happy to be bringing this one to you. By the way, this is my primary series for the year, and it's going to roll right on through the entirety of the calendar year into the release of Pro Cycling Manager 2024, so you can expect well over 100 episodes of this series. I can't wait. Let's get to it. And for this series, I'm utilizing the World Database 2023. This is a series that you can easily follow along and do yourself. You don't even need the editor for it. I do recommend not only the World Database 2023, but any of your preferred databases available on the Steam Workshop for free, as they very much enhance the core of the game. In the past, when it came to Pro Cycling Manager, I would try to navigate 2 or even 3 series simultaneously, which was too much. It was too much to maintain, too much to do, and so when it came to the tutorial side of things, I wasn't getting as much tutorials, as much content out with that. This year, this is my primary series. This is my only primary series. I will have a secondary series with minor coverage of the Pro Cyclist mode, but this is the main one. Now, the extra time that it's going to save me is going to be invested more highly into putting out tutorials and whatnot, some of that extra content for the game this year. So let's see how that goes. So please follow along with this journey. Speaking of, before we even jump in and create our Lions team, let me take this quick moment to explain to you how YouTube works. Oh wait, you've probably heard this from 100 others before. There's an algorithm, and that algorithm favors gigantic channels. It does not favor small channels. It does not favor lesser known titles such as Pro Cycling Manager 2023. You hit search, you find things directly, you're going to find me pretty quickly that way. But for a browser page to be bringing up any content and showing it to others who have not seen it before, who have not heard of the game or the channel before, it requires that algorithm to kick in. With a channel my size, with a game this size, I need a boost to help with that algorithm. So if you can take just a moment, drop below, click that like button, leave a comment. Whatever the comment is, it boosts that algorithm to help out. Of course, if you want to help out even more, feel free to subscribe as well. But let's get on with the creation of our Lions team. Historically, cycling was a sport of a handful of nations, and that popularity was immense within those nations, but it didn't exist much outside of those nations. Over time, that changed. Over time, that grew. And certain riders really helped the popularity within either nations or even continents. One such example is Chris Froome. Chris Froome is a 7-time Grand Tour victor. Though his parents are British, he was born in Kenya. He was raised both in Kenya and South Africa. And over the success of his career over the past decade, he really started to boost popularity of cycling in Africa, where cycling hadn't been popular prior to that. And we're starting to see the emergence of some other talents within Africa. Right now, there are 2 in particular, Benyon Girmay and then Louis Meintjes of South Africa. And those 2 riders are quite good and certainly capable of getting a win every once in a while on their best day. But neither are necessarily favorites, and 2 riders, or 3 if you include Froome when he was in his prime, don't make a continent strong. It takes a lot more than that. there are still the powerhouses of cycling. And those powerhouses, of course, are almost entirely in Europe. Historically, there's been a couple exceptions to that, where you have the US for a time was quite dominant, but very much not so these days. Right now, Colombia is very strong independently as a cycling nation, as some of the world's best cyclists come out of there. But for the time being, of all of the continents, Africa is probably the weakest. Now, I did a very similar series to this for Pro Cycling Manager 2022. If you have not seen it, I certainly would recommend it to you to go back and check that one out. That is the PCM23 Dragons series, as it really sets the tone and the tempo for what it is we're going to be trying to accomplish here. I started that series mid-cycle, and so we got a little over 50 episodes through that one and covered 8 seasons in the peloton. And in those 8 seasons, I saw significant gains in Asia, as that was the target of that one, as that was the build a continent. Now this one compares pretty closely with that one, and we're going to draw some comparisons in a moment. But first, let's look at the Lions team that we're going to be starting with. And that, of course, here, our sponsor, Zulu Kingdom of South Africa. And we are going for the ultimate challenge with this one. Many seasons to come, many seasons to try to build the continent of Africa as a whole. I don't have to do all of the work myself. Hopefully there are other riders on other teams that are African themselves that can find success and help build the continent. I don't have to do all the work alone, but I will end up doing a lot of it. But it's not going to happen with these riders. We're starting with the hardest setup that we could possibly have. Now, if you want to do this challenge yourself, you can pick better riders. You could start with Gourmet. You could start with Menkes. And to be honest, Africa does not actually start with very many riders in the professional peloton as it is. So you're starting with a pretty limited selection. But here's the thing about your start. The better the riders at the start, the better you're going to be, the easier it's going to be starting out. The more riders you start with, the better it's going to be. Most importantly, the more salary you begin with, the easier it's going to be. We're going to take the hardest start we can possibly take. Just 10 riders, continental quality, and all 10 riders on a minimum salary, the minimum being $2,500. That puts us at a base salary as a team that's going to be challenging. We're not going to be able to afford Gourmet. Gourmet is $62K on his salary. Tisfatien is $13K on his salary. We're not going to be able to afford riders such as that for a long, long time, as our money is going to be quite low at the beginning. We're going to have to build that up as we also try to build the continent as a whole. With the 10 weakest riders that I could get my hands on, we're going to find things difficult in this first season, in these first couple of seasons. It's going to be a while before we are competitive, before we are good, and before we can actually start building the continent. But here's how that process works. Since last year, there's a new scouting system, and that new scouting system is tied directly to how riders are created within the game. Of course, you start with the actual peloton, the actual riders that exist around the world, but the game, year after year, creates new riders. And the creation of those riders are tied to this scouting system. In Africa, it's broken up into 2 regions, North Africa, South Africa. The North Africa portion, we don't have good coverage. Our scout isn't African. He's Swedish. Has no knowledge of the north area of Africa. But he's going to give us a point. It's going to give us a boost. He's got an okay reputation. He'll get better at it in time. We're going to go ahead and keep him assigned to that North Africa region. I could actually get better ratings out of using our South African scout, who is going to get a big boost. This is our home region, and we're getting a 7. So we're going to get a pretty decent evaluation in how good we are at scouting South Africa. North Africa will certainly get better in time. But here is the breakdown of what it is to scout a region and what it means to creation of riders within the database. Not all nations are included in the game, but for every nation that is included in the game, they have a rating, and their rating has two components to it. One, training structure, and the second being popularity of cycling. Now, those two ratings, they are dynamic, and that is where this series is going to come into play. But the training structure determines the quality of a rider when produced within the database. The popularity is going to determine how many riders a nation produces each year. The dynamic portion of this is determined as such. Winning major races, based on the original popularity of cycling within a nation. Winning major races is going to boost popularity, such as if you win Paris-Roubaix, you're going to see your nation's popularity increase unless it's already extremely high. For a low-quality rider, it doesn't even take winning a monument. It's going to take winning just about any race, or at least any Continental Pro type level race, is going to see a boost to popularity in your home country. That means we're going to start having more riders show up in the database each year. Alternatively, the training structure is a cumulative impact over the course of an entire season based on the ranking of a rider at the end of that year. So if you are ranked in the top 10 and you come from a weaker riding nation, it's going to produce a boost to the training structure. At the start of the playthrough, the strongest African nation is South Africa, right in the middle ground as a training structure of 5, which means they're going to produce riders of some quality, and a popularity of 5, meaning they're going to produce a decent amount of riders. This is a rating out of 10. It's one nation at the midpoint. Now here is why Africa is going to be tougher than what Asia provided us. First thing, there are 25 African nations. No, that's not accurate, right? There's a lot more than 25 African nations. But the game contains 25 African nations. There are 38 Asian nations. So that's a minus 13. There's already 13 fewer nations with which for us to work from. Now there's 2 scores for every nation. Training structure, popularity. The lowest score possible is a 1. So that means with 2 ratings and a 1 in each, the minimum score combined is a 2. The average rating in Africa, 3.8, or just slightly less than a 2.2 is the average rating. Asia, it's not good, but it is a little bit higher. It comes in at just under 4.5, or 2.25 per nation. It's a difference of minus 0.8. So it is a little bit lower. So each nation, a little bit weaker, and overall, a little bit fewer nations. However, you don't need each and every nation to build and be powerful. You need a handful. You need a few. You need one dominant powerhouse. Colombia itself could make South America quite strong. So what about the best nations within each of the 2 regions? Well, first off, Japan and China combined for 10 points. 2.8 for Japan, a 1.9 for China. Kazakhstan has a 5.3. There are 9 nations in all that combined have 6 points or more, with a handful of 2 4s. In Africa, there's only 5 such nations, so 4 fewer nations that have 6 or more points. The weakest of those, Tunisia, at a 3.3. Morocco has a 3.4. You're going to get some talent out of those nations, though. It's not nothing, but it's going to be hit and miss. It's going to be hard. It's going to be one generational talent every 3 or 4 years showing up. Rwanda has a 2.6. That's all the way up to 8 points, but with a training structure of just 2, where you're going to see more riders showing up in the database with a training structure of 2, they're just not going to have very much quality. So it's going to be hard to find a decent rider coming out of Rwanda. But there are 2 pretty strong nations starting out. Eritrea, a 3-6. That's where Girmai's from. And South Africa, Menkes, with that 5-5. But in the direct comparison of Africa versus Asia, Asia is a little bit easier of a start than Africa is going to be for us. So the challenge is on. Over 8 seasons in Asia, I managed to grab 15 points of progression for various nations. That means I either improved training structure or popularity within a nation by a combined 15 points. And we got pretty dang competitive. We got up to World Tour in the final season, but we very much had not yet turned Asia into the world's best. In Africa, it's pretty clear that South Africa and Eritrea are going to be our best chance. I think more than Rwanda, I think Morocco and Tunisia are going to offer us an opportunity, though Rwanda certainly could happen if we get one good rider early on. We could see that training structure increase, and then when you already have that popularity piece, it's possible that we could turn Rwanda. Those are absolutely the 5 strongest. After that, there's really only 2 to 3 more nations that even have much of a chance. We're going to have a much smaller pool to work from, and getting to World Tour level with this smaller group, it's going to be difficult. My prediction is it's going to take us more than 8 seasons to get there. And that does mean we need to get a lot of seasons under our belt to find success, to get Africa to become the best cyclists in the world. And therefore, we need to move pretty fast. And I think our introduction has already been relatively long, but hopefully that gives you a good indication of how you can do this yourself if you want to follow this challenge, as many picked up the challenge when I started with Dragons, and many have tried Africa and told me just how tough it is. Well, we pulled it off with Asia, or at least we were pulling it off with Asia. I'd like for us to succeed with it with Africa. So we're going to do a lot of fast forward, a lot of quick simulations along the way as we try to grow and develop. Seasons are the most important part. It's going to take a season after a season after a season. But success, victories, and ranking points. Those are the 2 things that we need to grow these nations along the way. Very quickly, let's go over the ground rules for the challenge. First off, it's an all-African challenge. I cannot hire riders outside of Africa. I cannot hire staff outside of Africa. I cannot hire sponsors outside of Africa. However, if we do get stuck for some reason, we're not getting sponsor offers, because you get 3 sponsor offers a year is all. At some point, we may make a decision to use the editor to take a sponsor and make them into an African sponsor if we stall out completely, if we've maxed out our money and have no growth remaining and aren't getting African offers. But we're good for now. We start with an African sponsor, and there are a few African nations that certainly have the potential to provide us with offers. But it's also important that the staff is African. Some of the staff that we begin with is a very limited balance right now, so we're going to have to be careful on how we do this. But our trainers, they're both South African, so we're good there. Our scouts, well, we have one from South Africa, but we have one from Sweden. That's not good. And he's actually rather expensive. We're going to go ahead and release him right now, because actually when you go into the scouts, there are a handful of African scouts available out there, and so we're going to go ahead and hire one of them. I already have one based in South Africa. I want to get one based in North Africa. And it turns out that there are a couple of Tunisians available to us, one with national rating, one with regional rating. I'm going to go ahead and take the national rating one, who has a 3 rating in Africa North. That's going to be very good for us. It's another expense that I hate using, but we're going to have to do so to be within our limits. A South African doctor international rating for 4,700. It's the sign-on fee that hurts. We've already spent $25K of the $60K that we had just on replacing our staff. The first couple of seasons are going to be pretty much all about finances as we try to reshape the squad and start finding the riders with the best potential. But building finances is going to be important for the longevity of the series, which means we need to find success within sponsorship. So let's start with where we're at financially. 10 riders, minimum salary, $25,000 a month. Good news, only 3 of the 10 riders have contracts for next season, because almost certainly we're going to find better. Our 3 best riders that we have right now are all 29 years of age. Age, not a big deal. Getting the best rider you can is getting the best rider you can. However, riders generally young are going to have potential to get better, and that's what we're going to need, especially when we're starting out with the 10 weakest riders that I could find. I do think we have lucked out a little bit, though. Our starting salary could have been significantly lower, but the sponsor we have, with the 10 riders that we have, we're going to start out with a budget of $60K per month. That's a lot, especially when our expenses, rider-wise, is only $25K. Now, we are going to be having a fair bit of staff expense added on top of that, but ultimately, that's a decent starting salary point for us. Super success, if we get a 85% or better evaluation at the end of July, we will be increasing that to $75K next year. That's got to be the goal. That's the primary thing to do this season, is to find success with a team incapable of providing it. The main objectives for the sponsor: a top 10 at the Tour of Saudi Arabia, stage wins, which I don't know how many wins, if any, we're going to get this year, is our next 2 primary objectives. And then there are a couple top 10s there. I think those 3 top 10 objectives are going to be the major targets of the season, and pretty much the only races that we will participate in firsthand. National championships are the best way for a team such as ours to gain sponsor confidence. But right now, most of the riders I have are the weakest riders of the couple biggest nations. They're not going to win their national championships because they're the weakest riders. So I only have a few riders otherwise that are going to be capable of maybe supplying a national championship of some sort. But the good news, at continental level, top 10s are going to get you a big bonus. And even those weakest riders are going to be capable of getting top 10s, because outside of, 1 to 2 nations, there aren't more than 10 riders within the database. So we're going to be scoring top 10s actually quite easily. So we should have no issues while we're in continental. The biggest thing is going to be continually growing those finances and hoping through scouting that we find somebody who's got some quality and trying to get them signed. That's easier said than done, because we are going to be starting as a team with no reputation whatsoever. And developing that reputation requires growing. But growing requires good riders. Signing good riders, requires a reputation. We're on a bit of a slippery slope here, where it's going to be a difficult task in these early seasons. But here I go again, still talking, still no racing. Let's get to one of those early objectives, such as the Tour of Saudi Arabia. As for the competitive side this year, our wheels are actually pretty good. We have a supplier. They haven't done anything new in years, but we have good comfort in one model. We have really good, it's only mediocre on the reliability and feeling, but we have really good aero for time trials. We have fairly good aero for sprints, and we have decent lightness for climbing stages. That's okay, but a lot of options when it comes to wheels. However, our frames, not good. We have some really, really super old models with Fandriost, who actually, we have R&D for them, so we're going to do a total redesign, but there's only 2 options. There's one for a time trial, and there's one for everything else. It's tolerable for climbs, and it's terrible for anything else. That's not good for us. Not good at all. First race of the year, first major objective, the major objective of the year is the Tour of Saudi Arabia, where they want us to finish in the top 10. Here's the favorites. There's 5 stages. All 5 are sprint stages. Bauhaus is a 78-75 sprinter. Dainese is a 78-79 sprinter. Menton, it gets weaker after those top 2, but he's a 75-75 sprinter. My team, our best sprinter, is a 62-64. 62. We're not going to win any sprints. None. Not a one. We're not going to finish on the podium of any sprints in any of the 5 stages. Well, that doesn't mean we're going to be outside of the top 10. We have a chance. It's not an easy one. But here's where our chances lie. The intermediate sprints, the breakaway. Our only hope, our only shot is getting top 3s in intermediate sprints. We're going to be fighting to get into the breakaway, hoping that you only have 3 riders, because then you're guaranteed a top 3. And then hanging on and making sure not to drop out of the peloton and lose time at the end of the stage. That is your pathway. That is your ticket to a top 10 in this type of race. It's too early in the season. None of my riders are on a fitness peak, but every single one of them has this as an objective. So they are all carrying +2s. And in those +2s, we're looking at a good potential race day condition out of this group and give us a chance. We need to be in the break. 1 rider out of 3 would be fantastic, or 2 riders out of something larger. Fortunately, I've started with a number of guys near the front of the field. Only 100 in the peloton, not a major race. You already see 1 taking off. That is what we're going to be up against. We're looking at 75 mountains. We're looking at 70 flat, 73 Barrador. By the way, attributes were reshifted after a video that I made before the release of the game, and it is so much cleaner. Looks beautiful. I'm so happy that they made this suggestion, or this change that I suggested, and that is now your mountain, the new medium mountain and hills rating, coupled with time trial and prologue and flat being shifted from the first one in the line to this second row, to then be paired with the cobble, sprint, and acceleration ratings along with downhill, which is a much cleaner look. It is a huge, it's such a tiny thing, but it's a huge thing if you've been playing the game a long time. So Imurezi is going to be so much stronger, but he's only a 57 sprint, 64 acceleration. Actually, that's somebody that you can get in the group and maybe hang with. Zorail has a +2, but he's such a weak rider. Really poor flat rating, so we're going to try to not have him be the guy we send off. Decent flat rating for Et El Abdia. So we're going to send him into the group. And is David's... Oh, he's an okay sprinter with an okay flat rating. I'm going to try to send both of those two. And then have the others set up early on. And that would be 2 out of 3 guys in the break. If we can manage to do that, I'm loving what that could potentially do for us. We're going to try to set up here early on, but there's already another rider on the attack. And already a little bit of an acceleration out of these guys. Wow, that was all the sprint that these guys already had. Let's back off a little bit here so we can get some cooperation out of the Jumbo-Visma rider. For now, the field is sitting up. This could be great for us. 30 seconds, the advantage so far. Ayab is our best all-around rider, but he's only a 66 climber. There's no climbing to do here, so he's not of a concern in those regards. Okay, the acceleration is on to try to get away. 1 rider is trying to attack. He's got a slender advantage over the field. For now, we have about 40 seconds over him. Minute 20, the advantage for these 3. We've got a shot to actually get away here. We have 5K to go until we reach the intermediate sprint. We have a 6.5 minute advantage over the peloton, which is giving us the comfort of being out front for the 2 intermediate sprints, and we're going to gain time with these 2. It's also giving me the comfort of if the peloton comes on really hard to try to catch up to us, as we're down to 2.3K, by the way, for this sprint. We're going to try to win it, and especially with such a weak sprinter, I like our chances of maybe getting a 1-2 here, the best time that we can get. So we're looking at a 62.65 in terms of sprint and a 63.64. Very similar. Better flat rating of a 67. No, it's a 70 and a 67. That's going to help us out with that. But boy, who to lead this out? I suppose you have a better flat, and then so Davids will follow and be set up as our sprinter. But with 2.3K, we're going to start to kind of speed things along here in a moment. 1.7. Okay, accelerating at 1.3. Starting the sprint a little early. Now 700 meters for Davids to try to finish it out. It is technical through here. Will Davids even overtake his teammate? He does not. But we get a 1-2 across the line. That's good. So a 1-2 across the line. That's awesome. And there's a slight chance, very slight, but there is a chance that these guys can hang on and maybe take the stage, which would really put us in a strong position for getting a top 10 for the GC. And as we approach the second intermediate sprint, Davids is just in front this time, so I'm going to have him go first. And Abdia is going to take the second go this time, and it's going to be another 1-2 for us. It's good that our opponent's just not very good in sprinting department. Peloton is coming on really hard. The likelihood of these guys hanging on to the end, it's already down to a 3.5 minute gap with 60K left to go. So chances are we're going to have to just take what we got, which was 10 seconds each. So they've each picked up 10 seconds, which is already going to put them equal with the race leader at the end of the stage. 36K, we still have a 2-minute advantage. There is a tiny chance that these guys could hang on, and I'm trying to push harder and harder and keep Limarese working with us. But a minute 40 the advantage with 32K left. Having to keep an eye on our energy consumption, though, of course, because if we don't time things right, we're going to find ourselves getting dropped by the peloton. So can only work so hard, and at the moment he's not working with us. So I think if we're going to do something, we got to kind of step up and do it now. Minute 10 the advantage, 25K to go. Yeah, it's not looking good. And now he's trying to attack us as we go inside a minute. We're going to have to ultimately just kind of work together here. Never mind what he's doing. 18K. 50 seconds. 45 seconds advantage. 16K. Again, he's attacking. He's just not cooperating with us. He's thinking about the stage. 13K. 30-second advantage. We're going to gel up. This is getting into dangerous territory. 18 seconds. I think, no, they're going to catch us. They're going to catch us. 15-second advantage. 8K to go. 9-second advantage. We're going to get beat in the sprint. We need to sit up. They've got us. They've got us. They're right behind us. 2 bike lengths. We're not going to hold that off with the sprinters, especially when we're not sprinters. We need to conserve energy for those 2. So they're going to sit up and go 99. Rigora, protect Davids. He's the weaker. They're too tired to sprint. We just need to get guys in position to protect them. 6K. So here's how I'm planning to handle these final 6 kilometers. Our sprinter today is Biyaza Uhirui. He's who we're riding for because we're already down to 4K. I probably should have put one more guy in between there as we're down to 3.8 now. which I suppose I could do that here real quick. Can we get one more up there? That's setting the other guys up too much now. He's going to have to start sprinting. Soft sprint. You can see the other team set up by their sprinters. 2.1K. Mansouri trying to lead out our man, who's now 1.2K out. He's not going to last very long in the sprint, which is why we kind of have to wait. And that's just because of the weak stamina. Oh, blocked off by his own teammate. Cost him 1 bike length is all, though. You can see how all of the sprinters finish right ahead of us. Markov taking the stage. We're just not good enough to compete in the sprint. We don't have enough speed, which is why those intermediate sprints become the important element. Neither rider was dropped, so they hang on, and that 10-second time bonus they each picked up for taking alternatively first and second over the 2 intermediate sprints puts them just behind Markov for the leader of the race. And so our journey has begun. We're getting things underway. Here's what to expect in the future. 1, we're going to speed through seasons because that's what it's going to take. Longevity is what it takes to build a continent. So we're not going to be doing every race along the way. The quick sim will be our friend. Even in this first race, the quick sim will be our friend in certain stages, and we'll do what we need to do to get a top 10 to succeed, so that we can build sponsor confidence, so that we can increase our funding season by season, so that we can afford to have Benya and Girmay on our team. Also, in time, as the game just released over the last couple of days, the world database will be updated, and it will see changes. Markov will become Morkov. Additional races will be included. In this first season, as of right now, there are no national championships for the nations in which I need them to exist to give us the boost in the sponsor confidence. Right now, we're going to have to rely on races like this to see that sponsor confidence increase. We're facing some extra challenges, and that's okay. I came for the extra challenges. I look forward to the extra challenges, and I hope you do as well. That is going to do it for this first episode, though, of this brand new Let's Play Lions Build a Continent of Career Mode here in Pro Cycling Manager 2023. I hope you liked it. If you did, please take that moment. If you didn't do so at the beginning, click that like button, leave that algorithm boost comment, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there, and bye for now.